Everyone.
Hello.
I think we have a notice. All right, I see it. Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the the final session of LMK's TMF Hotline series. This is a continuation of the earlier session, but led by our colleagues Sholay Edivan and Jackie Morrill. So really just kind of happy to be here with my colleague Ruby Scott to just continue to talk through and answer any questions that you have, regarding the TMF, whether it be about processes or consulting services, or just the approach that LMK takes, when we execute these TMF activities. And what better way to do it than a real-time hotline? Just a little bit about myself. I'm Janice Del Rosario, the director of our TMF Services Division here at LMK Clinical Research Consulting, which is now actually a part of the TransPerfect family over the past year, a little over a year. What I do is I oversee our projects and that provide the TMF services to our clients, but I also act still as a TMF consultant for some of our clients. And just again, really excited to be here. I've been with LMK for a little over 3 years, but have been in the industry for 17 years now, started in clinical operations where records management and the TMF, which back then it wasn't even termed TMF, you would hear different terms for it, but it was just always something that I was exposed to, and learned about from day one, and really just gravitated towards there. So again, I'm joined here with my colleague Ruby Scott, and I'll pass you over to her.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the final episode of our live streaming. I'm happy to be here. My name is Ruby Scott. I am the associate director here at LMK. I've been with LMK since about 2017. Started in the industry back in 2005 with a large CRO that was centralizing their records management department. Yes, it wasn't the TMF department. It was the records management department back in 2005. Yeah. So I've been in the TMF space since entering clinical research. I really like it. It's a great fit. And then I found LMK, and it was the best of both worlds. Like Janice, I also participate in some of our consulting projects, but sort of straddle that role with the leadership of, all the other super fun stuff like resourcing. Happy to be here with you guys today. Looking forward to some interactive chatting. This is the highlight of my day today, Janice.
I know, it's only like morning time for me. So.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Your day is just started.
Goodness. But yeah, no, I completely agree. And then, we'll get back to our regular scheduled program with, doing the work that we are going to be talking about today. So
right, exactly.
Very, very exciting. And so this is actually kind of a nice break to just like talk through those, right now, I'm sure some of you are also taking a break to come in here. And again, the questions that you have may be something that's been burning for some time, or as you're doing the work right now and you need an answer, that's what this forum could be used for as well. So please, really excited to kind of go through our questions with you today. A little bit about, for those who are just joining or are, with as far as LMK goes, I mean, part of the reason we wanted to do this is because we have such a broad range of just different projects, and we have such a full spectrum of services, from our standard TMF document management, to doing quality reviews, migration, all the way to the TMF consulting aspect of providing that end-to-end TMF process development, improvement, and eTMF implementation. So just anything that you can think of relating to TMF, we've probably touched that. And we just want to be able to just share our knowledge there, just because we've had such wonderful opportunities with our projects. And so really excited again to dive into the questions. You can either use the chat even through LinkedIn, and then we'll publish that here, as well as you can email us questions through the hello@lmkcrc.com. All right, so let's dive in. Okay, this is my first time doing this. So I will read it, and then we'll decide between the two of us, or for everyone there, we tend to piggyback off of each other's answers just because I think they put us together because we're like super in sync. So we'll try to move on to the next questions. But here's the first one. How does a TMF consulting firm assess the current state of an organization's TMF processes and identify areas for improvement?
Call on me. Our approach, for starters, we wouldn't approach processes in silo, right? You'd want to assess the processes along with the technology and the people, processes, and technology. It's a unified front. You got to have all three of those pieces. So I wouldn't recommend assessing the processes independently without those other pieces for starters. But those processes, you would have to read them, right? They have standard operating procedures that you would want to read those processes, but you would also want to ensure that you understand how those processes align to the system that you're using, if it's fit for purpose, that you are streamlined, that you're not creating unnecessary, undue work, duplicative processes. The processes need to align with the technology that you are using for your eTMF, as well as the people that are working in the TMF. The surest way to achieve non-compliance is to make processes that don't work for your people.
Yeah, and to add to that, because I thought that's exactly what seems to be what. In order to absorb that information, you have to take a step back and assess, the current state of the processes. And then if it's a situation where, you have processes in, place and, looking into the TMF, doing a TMF quality, QC or quality review and looking at it from that point of view, and having a person providing them their current process and then actually pressure test it by doing a review in the system of your TMF to identify if there are gaps, if there are non-compliance, and coming up with that so that you know what areas require improvement. But a lot of times you won't be able to identify those areas unless you review your processes and then pressure test it by actually reviewing that study's TMF to see if they align or not. Great question. All right. Let's see what else.
Looks like they're coming in fast and furious.
I know. All right. What strategies can a TMF consultant employ to enhance the traceability and auditability of TMF processes? Do you want me to?
Yeah, you start this one.
Or Ruby?
You start this.
Yes, more so now. Moving into, because there's always been traceability and auditability in the TMF. You just haven't heard those terms. I think the key here, taking eTMF outside of the aspect of it is really looking at, the standard ISAGs, like good documentation practices. Do you have the right policies around that or the right guidance around that and meeting ALCOA? Because traceability, really it's back in the paper world, it was looking at initial and dating and making sure that there's, an audit of any corrections or any updated version. So putting that in the eTMF world is really what you could do is through eTMF implementation during that time is assessing the platforms and the eTMF technology vendors and asking them like what sort of functionalities do they have that would cover these aspects, the audit trails and traceability, especially some of the more robust systems that they have to have that. And so it's just going through and asking those questions during your implementation or your vendor qualification when you're selecting an eTMF. And then if you already have one, that's where you'll want to go back to the basics of, okay, is there a way for version control in the system to be able to, when you upload or correct a document, there's that audit trail. Is there a way? Those are the types of questions that our consultants, including us, we would ask so that we can then identify any potential gaps that don't meet the regulations and then build a process around it. So I hope that answers that. And again, Ruby, do you have anything?
Well, I think it's an interesting question because what strategies can a TMF consultant to employ to enhance the traceability and auditability of the TMF process? Well, the TMF itself is the traceability and auditability of the clinical trial, right? So TMF is all about traceability and auditability. Document, document, document. That's the answer. Is you capture each step. You don't know what you don't know. It's not, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. Like all of those cliches and catchphrases that we hear all the time being in TMF are exactly that. It's all about traceability and auditability. To be able to reconstruct the trial, that is your audit trail, right? That the TMF itself is traceability and auditability. So everything you said, but I found an interesting question, just because that is TMF. That's what it's all about, is to document what happened so that it can be recorrected by future parties that, they weren't on the trial 6, 10, 20 years later. You need to be able to reconstruct. That's what traceability and auditability is. So that those need to be embedded in all of your processes along the way. And even back when it was paper, as you said, I remember those days of the receive date stamp on the backs of the documents. So, that was traceability and auditability before we were electronic.
Checking in, going into those forms, checking in, checking out. So it's almost the same. You just sort of map that into the eTMF space and look for those same types of functionalities that would support all of that, so that it's all there, and any changes or any updates to your TMF or anything can also be traceable. Great question. It's so different when it's just us two, because I'm used to always hearing feedback back, so this is new for me. The next question.
Okay, I'll read this one. Okay. What types of reporting and metrics does TMF Consulting provide to organizations to track TMF process performance and compliance?
Oh, okay. Did you want to take that, or I can take that?
And it looks like all my answers are going to be the same, right?
Yeah.
It's all about quality, timeliness, completeness. Those are your big three, right? The trifecta, or the holy trinity. Those are the three that you should be most concerned about: quality, completeness, and timeliness. Of course, there are many others, but that is. Oh, this is what types of reporting and metrics does TMF Consulting? So what types do we provide? Whatever type they want. Whatever type you want.
I can interpret this different ways, but it would be, as far as what we would, if we were the resources or those who would support this activity for an organization, we would of course use and assess like the platform first, right? To see what metrics can be pulled out of it, because we know we've seen a broad range of eTMF systems, and so we would always kind of go in there first and look to see. But we are looking for those the trifecta. We're looking to see what metrics we can pull from the system related to completeness and timeliness and quality, and then backtrack from there. If there are reports that are not as I would say robust, where that's just something you can pull and kind of manipulate through an Excel, and poof, you can send it out to everyone, which is always our nice happy. But if we can't, then we backtrack to figure out ways what information we can get from the system, information we can get from the process, to build a metric out for you that would be able to address those and try to track those three areas. But it's always going to be completeness, like potential missing documents, timeliness, how timely are those documents getting into the system, and then the quality is the quality of the document in there, of standards and meet the quality standards. So we would look at those, but those are the three. But as far as our strategy, it would be the same as assessing the platform, assessing your process and your people, because without metrics, you can build reports, but the other components of people who, the infrastructure that you have, who would be able to support, leading that effort of distributing it out to a study team or collecting and doing the remediation, or all of that matters. So it's always going to be it's a trifecta of the TMF metrics part, as well as the people, process, and technology. We look at all of those aspects to be able to kind of help support and build out what works for your organization. Always customized solutions, because
Always.
yeah, that's like been our thing. Ruby and I have been talking about that a lot, is that we TMF, there's a lot of industry standards, but we understand organizations are different. Your operating model is different. So that's what we would sort of look at with these standards in mind.
And just one thing to add to that, I mean, that is definitely the big three, right? If you're only allowed 3 metrics, those are the 3 you need. But there are other metrics, and it's based on the customization. Like it may be that I'm pulling metrics. I do an audit of a specific TMF, or a QC even of a TMF, and you have the issues that were flagged up in that TMF as findings that these are the problems, right? Then you can take that and use that as a metric. If all of your finding type is one specific finding type, well, then that's pretty easy to trend. That this is an issue with either our people, our process, or our technology. That why is the document date always wrong on this document type? That technically is a metric. I could say that is a quality metric, a subset of quality metrics, but the big 3 are quality, complete, timely. But within those, I mean, anything that I can pull data on and amass it, then you can absolutely use that and you interpret that data by trending that, by analyzing that data to pinpoint where the underlying issues are, so that you can address those, as opposed to just continuously slapping a Band-Aid on it. If you've always got the wrong document date for a particular document type, then dig into why is that? Why do we always get the wrong document date? Is the process unclear? Is it that it's a particular individual? Like these all of the metrics can be used to improve the quality of your TMF, but you have to do something with them. You can't just run a report and I pulled the metrics. That's not going to do anything for your TMF, right? You got to analyze that information and figure out what it means to your organization in order to address the underlying issue of why that metric isn't where it needs to be.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's see what else. Ooh, hi, Jen. Let's see. How can TMF, this is actually a nice segue. How can TMF metrics help keep the TMF inspection ready?
Well, by themselves, they cannot, as we just said. Running the report, it doesn't do you any good. You need to interpret those metrics, like figure out what those metrics mean, what they say about your organization, about your processes, about the people, the technology, how they align or don't align, and address the underlying cause of why the metric isn't where it needs to be in order to keep your TMF inspection ready. Because once you address that issue, then you can implement that correction moving forward to prevent recurrence of that issue, and that helps to keep the TMF inspection ready.
And yeah, I like your example about inaccurate document dates, for example, like when you enter that in a metadata off, by itself, and as you're going in document by document, you don't see that, right? And that's what metrics are. It's key performance indicators. You establish that. So you would be able to identify that as a trend by having these metrics. And then from there, it's okay, well, gosh, a lot of these documents have the wrong document date. Then you go one step further and go, well, what's the root cause of that? And it's, maybe there aren't standardized dating conventions that could be used. And then you could develop a process around that, or in your TMF index and structure, you can capture some of that information there. But that's where these metrics are so helpful, because in that example alone, as what some might consider minor as a inaccurate document date, it ends up being something a bit bigger, because if you have the wrong dates, then you can't find the documents that you're looking for potentially, or if it's a large volume of documents and you're trying to go by date, like all of it just kind of snowballs. And so having these metrics really help kind of get
highlight.
Yeah. So I like that. I like that example. That was a really good one.
Well, it opens up the investigation, that you find one incorrect document date and it means nothing. But once you amalgamate that data at a much higher level, and you find that 75% of this document type is input with the wrong document date. Well, now that's huge. Like that's indicative of a larger problem that we need to figure out. And maybe by digging into that and asking the people Why are you using this date when Sally is using this other date? Well, Sally's referencing the CTMS manual, and Joe is referencing the TMF index that's attached to the TMF plan. And that's how you identify that you have malaligned data, right? You have one date in one guidance document and another date in another guidance document. And then you can fix that. And see, that's how you help keep the TMF inspection ready.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, let's see where.
What else?
And thank you again for all these questions. It's all great. It looks like a lot were coming from.
Like, how much time do we have for this?
Yeah, I know. I keep looking because we can talk and talk. Okay, let's see. What methodologies and tools does TMF Consulting use to facilitate efficient document filing, indexing, and retrieval within the TMF?
Methodology, consistency. That, and I've been using this example for probably 15 years, but I would rather have stuff consistently misfiled than inconsistently filed sometimes, right? Like if you file all your 1572s as CVs, at least I can find the 1572. But if you're just filing them all over the place, that doesn't help me at all. And it does note the whole point of having a filing system is for retrievability so that I can find the document later. If your filing system doesn't allow me to find the document later, then this was an exercise of utility. And what was the point of all the effort put into the TMF if you can't find the documents when you need them? That's the whole point of having a filing system.
Yeah. And then as far as tools or what are ways to be able to make, keep them consistent or standardized? What are some of the tools that organizations can use, or what we try to suggest in situations where maybe they have very little process in place or have too much complex process? What are ways that we could standardize? And which is exactly that. It's standardize them. And we look at what's really great now is, again, over the last, I keep saying 5 years, but really just because I just don't feel like time is 10 years. I was doing my math. I was like, no, actually 10 years, that it's, we've just come so far with the TMF and the type of support, with the TMF reference model and, from where it was the DIA, now it's part of CDISC. So let's utilize some of the standards out there where there's the TMF reference model that can be used to customize into your organization's, TMF index structure, which facilitate, consistent filing, indexing, because you can add information there of, how you want your metadata, like guidance, metadata guidance, version control or version guidance, dating conventions. Like those are some of the things that organizations are more like moving towards for those who don't have it. And a lot of them now, they're taking that step further and what we would prefer and suggest is to not just use a TMF reference model as is. It's meant to be customized for your organization. So that tends to be what we think are ways to do that, to establish that consistency too. So
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Use the standardized tools where you can, because they are standard. I mean, this is a kind of a niche market that I've been in it for 18 years, and I keep running across people I worked with before. So that if you try to reinvent the wheel at your organization, that everybody else in the industry is doing it this way, but you're going to do it your way, that doesn't. You're going to eventually get employees that have worked someplace else, and that creates an inconsistency.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So, and then the other tip I have on that: don't over engineer it either. Like that's the tough part, right? That you're not the consultant, so how do you know when have I reached the line of over engineering? I've seen where organizations they don't have the experience to know, but they over engineer it. Like don't try to. This is my example. The TMF index that the DI, no longer the DIA reference model since 2012. So actually 11 years ago, Janice. The TMF reference model, it absolutely should be customized to your organization. I absolutely recommend putting your own sub artifacts into each artifact category. Use your company's document names to make that easy for your study teams to identify where this needs to be filed. But I've also seen the far end of that, where the person who's thinking about it is, well, if we give every document its own artifact, then it'll be super easy to find later.
So true.
But you're not taking into account somebody's got to get it there, right? So if you make it too granular so that it's so difficult to determine where that document goes on the front end, then on the back end, you don't have what you thought you were going to have, which was every document has its own artifact. What you have is a mess because there's a bunch of stuff misfiled because people couldn't identify it to that level of granularity on the front end. So it's kind of use the standardized tools when you can, customize them to your organization, but be cautious of over engineering documents to customize them too much so that you're creating problems for yourself down the road.
That's great. Perfect. All right. Let's see.
How does TMF Consulting facilitate the training and education of TMF personnel to ensure they have the necessary skills and knowledge to manage the TMF effectively?
Yeah.
Well, the easy one here is the user access forms, right? If you're using an electronic TMF, then they don't even get access to the system until they have the proper training for their role.
Yeah, Jackie sort of covered this in the last session, which I'll summarize here too, that oftentimes we find what's successful, especially if, and this is specific to like, whether it be you're in the process of implementing, say, like an in-house eTMF system, right? Or doing TMF process improvements, there's always going to be like the change management aspect with your functional groups. And so what we have found successful where we've been a part of is like our consultants will go in and, number one, assess the landscape and, culture, platform, everything from people, process, technology. Because when we do that assessment, we're able to identify, and can cross compare that with what your future state wants to look like, right? And that's where you identify a lot of the potential, gaps or, with TMF awareness, knowledge, education, because you find out like what is your current TMF operating model, your resource model. Is it primarily outsourced? Is it, is it centralized? And so you have functional groups that aren't really they're doing very light touch or no touch at all in the TMF. So that all can play a part into determining what type of training plan you need for your organization. That's where our consultants have kind of approached it that way, so that when you do that first step, then you can come up with a training plan that fits the role. And for functional groups, exactly what Ruby was saying, like you want it to be role based in a sense, because the ones that are doing more of the heavy lifting, you want to give them a more kind of detailed, robust training. The ones that are more light touch or less, let's focus on the type of training that they would have to do versus like a whole gamut of training where it doesn't even apply to them. So that's kind of the approach that, has worked out successfully, and always kind of what we advocate for is role-based training, develop training for your lines, know what each of your functional lines, and having where you can TMF champions from each line who's not part of TMF, but knows enough about that would support your efforts, so that we can roll out, a training that's effective and meaningful to your organization. So yeah.
Well, it's validated, right? That's the whole idea behind validated is fit for purpose.
Yes.
Don't spend 3 hours training someone who all they need to do is drag a document from this folder to this folder.
I will tell you that I've seen that.
I know. Or here.
And then you lose them, and
well, or the worst, I think it's worse the other way, where here we're going to give you admin permissions. Here's the big navigation of the system. That's not great either.
Yeah.
That leads to big problems down the road. And I mean, that's something that's required by regulatory agencies, right?
Yeah.
That you have to prove that these people are qualified and have the necessary skills. And if you can't document that, if you can't produce evidence of that, then that's potential, ding during your inspection. That fit for purpose.
Yes. Let's see. Keep the questions coming. A lot of these are coming from university. Okay. How does an LMK TMF I'm assuming consulting or consultant, assist in the identification and resolution of TMF process bottlenecks or inefficiencies to ensure smooth and timely document collection, review, and approval.
Well, I mean, and this is a lot like the first couple of
Yeah.
questions we had. It's very much about assessing the individual organization. That the bottlenecks, the process bottlenecks the root cause of that process bottleneck is not automatically the same across organizations. It's going to depend on that particular organization, and to identify that, you need to assess those three components again: people, process, and technology, to discover where your metrics are failing. And then dig deeper to find out why those metrics are failing in order to identify the issue first before you can even begin to implement a resolution to that issue.
Yeah. And then, what do I like? No, I have nothing more. That was good. All right.
Well, it's a difficult one to answer because we don't have a cookie cutter approach. So the answer for one company is not going to be the same
let's give an example. Yeah, like what I love it, like that we keep coming back to people, process, and technology, and what that means. Like, let's give an example where, okay, people, there's a bottleneck in the process with the people.
Poor training. Yes, retraining will be the solution, but
we don't know.
But that's the one team that keeps using the wrong date for monitoring.
Yeah, so then they're using the CTMS process or training those individuals if it's a targeted or group. So that's one aspect, right? Or and then technology, maybe same. It all comes down to whether it's lack of awareness, needs training. We need a process around that technology, and whether it be job aids, guidelines, step-by-step work instructions. Like those are all the pieces that would be the solution to these potential or identified inefficiencies. But you break it down by the people first, then the process itself. What does your SOP or your work instructions, TMF management tools look like? Then you find solutions. It's always going to be either augmenting it, updating, or training. And then same thing with the technology. Is it robust enough? Is it limited? Maybe it's more of a legacy system. So then there's not much you could do with the system, but then you augment the people and process. So that's what we mean when we say those three. Is you want to look at those and break it down so that then you can build it back up and figure out solutions for each of those that we identify.
So if it was so the examples that we were going through, so you have a TMF process bottleneck, essentially is what we're saying, and it's affecting document collection, review, and approval. Well, that's going to happen if there's an incorrect document date that this one team that's using the CTMS manual to determine what document date they're using. So they keep submitting documents with the wrong document date. That is going to slow down your document review and approval process, right? Because it's going to hit a snag during the indexing phase where there's going to be an issue flagged or a raised quality issue, depending on what system you're using. Whatever you flag it up, it's going to delay the document actually getting into the eTMF. And so that's where that would be a people issue. It may be a technology issue in that maybe your system doesn't have required dating conventions or there's no validation within that field to ensure that that's an appropriately formatted date. That your technology is the root cause of that. But it's still the same issue, but it could be different across two different organizations as far as the root cause, because we don't believe in a cookie cutter approach. And then so people, technology, if it's process, then it could be that maybe your process document doesn't specify. Maybe it's too ambiguous, that your index just says document date, and document date means one thing to this guy and something else to somebody else. So then your underlying root cause is process. And that can be easily rectified by updating your document to explicitly specify that the date of this document should be the signature date, the date that it was signed, or the latest date on the document, or whatever that looks like for your organization. But it could be any one of those three. It could be the same issue, and it is slowing down your doc review, collection, and approval. But the underlying cause of that issue could be in any one of those three categories. It's assessing your environment to determine what it is to you.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see, what else is up there? What role does TMF Consulting play in conducting TMF health checks or audits to assess the quality, completeness, and compliance of the TMF, and how are the findings addressed? um, yeah, like I had mentioned, we have a full spectrum of just TMF projects in general, and one of which is providing either the resources or even leading or supporting TMF, QC reviews, or other terms nowadays, is TMF completeness checks, health checks, gap analysis. So really what that means is looking at your TMF holistically to identify, potential gaps, missing documents, the quality, maybe even some of the timeliness, contemporaneous concerns. So we've have a lot of projects where we provide that type of service or approach of either being the ones as being a part of an extension to that organization's TMF team, or maybe that organization lacks the resources to, and the folks to do these TMF reviews. So then really we are that service that provides that for like a sponsor oversight review or independent check. So we do that type of service where we look at that, and we have very robust TMF QC tools that we use in the absence of using an organization's existing processes, because it just sort of depends. We have that as one option, and then or we can go into the organization's TMF and really insert ourselves to absorb that process and execute it. We've had, just because it's exactly what we keep saying, it's very customized. We have worked in many different systems, and so we've just had that opportunity to work in a lot of different systems that we could provide that kind of support and perform those TMF reviews and look for that to help support these organizations that need to know where their TMF stands and where they need to be if it is something that there's always going to be rooms for improvement and compliance. So yeah, we've done that. And then same with the findings. As far as we identify the findings, we group them from completeness and quality, depending on the system. Sometimes we can't get timeliness out of it, but we could work with anyone or organizations to see what we can come up with, and then we can summarize those findings, do some trending metrics. We've helped with supporting the remediation to the extent where we can, because we know TMF touches all functions, that a lot of these findings that we identify, especially if it's related to missing documents or the quality or the content of the document, that's something that is where LMK would be limited to actually resolving, other than following up with your owners to provide that. But those are the types of activities. Those are some of what we're working on right now, and what we have, a TMF project managers that could lead that effort, or if your organization has that TMF lead to do those things, but you need the people to actually perform it, we would do that as well. So again, customized, and this is what we do. We live and breathe this. So yeah, the answer is yes. It's a really an inside joke, because we get asked a lot of just different, do you do this, in broad range like of project sets, and it's just been a yes. So
we ask a lot of questions where people, I know they want this black and white, this is a scripted answer, that here's the template text for that. And we just don't have the template. It doesn't, there is no template for that. Everything is bespoke to the client. So, so yes. And then I'm hesitant to even go into this one, just because I'm either going to offer clarification or make this clear as mud. But I think I misread the question initially, because the question is, what role does TMF consulting play in conducting? And I assume they mean LMK clinical research consulting. What role does our organization play in health checks and audits? And yes, we absolutely have those projects, and we do that for multiple clients. And it is bespoke to the client, that how are the findings addressed? It depends on the contract. It depends on what they wanted and what they needed. But as far as I initially read it as TMF consulting, and I wouldn't call this TMF. I wouldn't call this activity TMF consulting, because consulting really is more about the overall landscape, your TMF landscape of your organization, people, process, technology, right? And TMF health checks and audits and findings. These are at the study level. This is study specific stuff. Now, absolutely, you could give us the results, the findings across, all your studies, and we can amass that data, collate that, analyze that, and get some insights into your TMF environment. But as far as like consulting on a single study QC, that those aren't, I wouldn't call that consulting. That is exactly what it is. It's TMF QC. And as a consulting firm, we do offer that service as a project to clients, but that is not our consultants don't do that. I guess I should say our project managers handle those projects.
Great, thanks for
clear.
Okay, so it looks like we have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. Let's see what we have. What's the magic final question? All right.
What strategies or best practices does TMF Consulting recommend for managing FDA-specific documents and submissions within the TMF, such as IND or investigational new drug applications and regulatory C? Correspondence.
Yeah, all about it. Okay. And then okay. Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, that's what's great. Like, more so because of our TMF education side, we've been able to really stay up to date on all of not just FDA, but all the regulatory agencies' latest and greatest guidance, where, in these guidances or in these, TMF is never like truly called out per se, but we've run through fine-tooth comb just to make sure there's things there that could relate to TMF. We stay up to date on that. But yeah, specific to the FDA specific documents, we've had engagements where we've utilized customizing or looking at the BMO checklists of what they look at, what the FDA inspectors look at, and trying to see where we can fit that in. Some organizations have even built in sort of tools around and mapped the BMO checklists into as TMF tools. And we've been sort of a part of that to be able to help map that and go through that with them. And, what I think where submissions. Go ahead, Ruby, if you had more to say.
Well, the only thing I have on this one is, it's hard for us not to be aware of this. Like, these show up in my Facebook feed, these show up in my LinkedIn feed. I get emails about it. I get spam emails about it. I get people trying to sell me stuff about it. Like, I'm bombarded with TMF specific things just because that's where I live, right? But as far as someone who's not in my role or doesn't work for LMK, as far as FDA specific goes, the FDA has great guidance documents. Just the QRGs they have, and they have Q&As as well, like specific questions, the frequently asked questions about Form 1572.
Yeah, that's great.
That you can read through, or 21 CFR 11. They have specific guidances that are created and they're written in layman's terms, and they're made for the end user. That if you're lost and you're not going to hire us to give you the answers, then I guess that would be my how do you keep up with FDA? You're not bombarded with it, and you don't live in that space. Check to see if the FDA already has a guidance document on that, because they do have a lot.
Yep. Great. I think, it looks like we are going to wrap up this. I mean, again, friendly reminder is you can still email us any questions that you have at hello@lmkcrc.com. It should be there. But yeah, this concludes our hotline series. This was the final session, and at least for this particular series. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to us first and foremost, and even more so just asking questions and giving us an opportunity to kind of just answer that. As you can tell, we could talk about this. I could spend another hour even.
Yeah, right.
Talking about this. But yeah, like, again, if you have any questions, or if there's anything that we can, even, again, we'll try to do these hotlines or ad hoc. That's kind of what we do. We have, ad hoc consulting engagements. We have just, again, reaching out to us through these emails. We can answer them as they're appropriate. But yeah, thank you so much for spending the time with us today, as well as for those who attended the other sessions. It was a pleasure for us.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you all for taking the time to give me a break from my day. Because as Janice said, I mean, this is so easy. Like this is excellent. I love this format. We just sit around and talk about TMF.
It was nerve-wracking at first, right? It was nerve-wracking at first, but then it's like, oh, you're talking about things we know. So not even about know, but just things that we enjoy talking about. And, again, sharing that knowledge that, is fun. So
it is.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. And just let us, feel free to email us. I don't even know how to conclude this, but thank you.
Right. Peace out.
And subscribe. Bye.